Hello. I am going to be reading from this. Hello. I'm going to be reading part of the novella from Eventual Beginnings. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's not short. Bookmark. You can get a free bookmark when you order the book from shop.joederowan.com, which I have put in the comments. Okay. It's again called Connections. Justy Friedman was in her bedroom getting ready for her first day back at high school after Thanksgiving break when it started. One moment she was slipping into a cute little blue skirt she'd bought specifically for today, and the next she was rolling around on the floor, screaming at the top of her lungs. The room had gone completely black, and someone was on top of her, straddling her, their hands on her face. She couldn't catch her breath. She tried desperately to push away the hands, but they wouldn't stop. Now the hands were wrapping around her throat, squeezing, choking the life out of her, and she couldn't even see her assailant. Justy, asked a far-off voice, are you okay? She reached out, grabbed at whoever was on top of her, dug her fingernails into their cheeks, and for just a second she could breathe again. Then a fist punched her jaw, and she felt a tooth dislodge as her mouth filled with blood. The hands were around her throat again, squeezing harder, and she felt like she might pass out. Justine, you're scaring me, said the voice. I'm going to call 911. She blinked. The hands were gone, and she could breathe again. She opened her eyes, heart pounding, as she stared up into the face of her mother. Mom? What happened? Regina Friedman's face looked as white as a sheet. She held her phone in one hand, a finger from her other hand hovering over the screen. I was hoping you might tell me that, Justine's mother said, letting her hands drop to her side. What's going on? You scared me half to death. Justy had no idea what was going on. All she could remember was an overwhelming feeling of dread and hands clamping down around her throat. Her neck no longer hurt and her jaw seemed fine. She shuddered as her mother helped her to her feet. I think I had a bad dream, Justy said as she finished putting on her skirt. Her mother raised an eyebrow, half dressed. Justy, are you having problems again? Justy had been overweight for most of her life. At 13, fed up with being picked on and bullied at school, she'd begun to diet. Dieting had turned into an obsession. By 14, she was 5 foot 4 inches tall and weighed 78 pounds. She was terrified of eating, dizzy all the time, and having heart palpitations. And now I must take a drink of water. She'd fainted in the bathroom one night, and her mother found her and called an ambulance. She'd woken in the ER attached to a saline IV, diagnosed with anorexia. What followed was months of treatments and therapy. She was now nearly 18 years old and weighed in at a healthy 127 pounds, which was perfectly normal for her height and build. That was over 4 years ago, and even though she'd done it for all the wrong reasons, the dieting worked. She'd gotten skinny and become one of the most popular girls in high school. No one made fun of her anymore, and boys were always falling all over themselves for her attention. I'm fine, Mom, she said, looking her mother in the eyes. I promise, I'm eating normally. I haven't lost weight. It really was just a bad dream. If you say so, she pulled Justy into a hug and then kissed her forehead before letting her go. Now finish getting ready. You don't want to be late for your first day back at school. After her mother left the room, Justy tried to remember the vision, the nightmare, or whatever the hell it had been. All she could recall was the tear she felt, almost like she was dying, and those hands wrapped around her throat, squeezing the life out of her. She sat back on her bed, eyes scanning her surroundings. Her school-issued Chromebook was on her desk, just where she'd left it. Her Chapel Rowan poster was on the wall across from her bed, and her collection of Build-A-Bear plushies sat atop her dresser. Samantha, the half Siamese, half tabby cat she'd been gifted on her... I'm sorry. Gifted... I looked away for a second. Been gifted on her 10th birthday, wandered into the room. Justy scooped the cat up into her arms hugging her, not really caring if her clothes ended up covered in cat hair. "There's my good girl," she whispered to the cat. "You'd never let anything bad happen to me, would you?" She let the cat hop down on the bed beside her. Maybe she really did fall back asleep and the whole thing truly was just a bad dream, exactly like she'd told her mother. That made the most sense. Besides, she had more important things to worry about today. Kissing Samantha's head, she rose from the bed and walked in the bathroom that adjoined her bedroom. She stared at herself in the mirror, and for a moment felt like someone else. She shook her head and ran a brush through her long blonde hair, quickly put on makeup, and then made her way downstairs for breakfast. And I'm going to pause for a second. Talk again about, this is coming out June 10th. This is a proof copy. It will be on, obviously in paperback, also Kindle on Amazon. You can also get it from my new shop on my website, which is shop.showderowan.com. Again, it's in the comments. If you order it from me, I autograph it if you want it autographed. And it will also come with a bookmark, which is also autographed, again, if you want it autographed. There. This is my second book of short stories. My first one came out in 2015, so 10 years ago. Wow. And most of these short stories, I think 12 of the 16, were from people on my Patreon. For a while I was doing drawings on my Patreon, and whatever name I drew got to tell me what kind of story they wanted me to write. And I'm going to start doing that again soon. So join my Patreon. I'll post a link on this later. Okay. I was trying to look and see if anybody's... I accidentally posted twice in this. Anyway, I'm going to keep reading from where I left off. Now Justy's at school. Okay. Justy sat in the cafeteria with Ashley Bowman, Chrissy Stewart, Keegan Statlander, and Michaela Danvers, eating lunch and talking about their college plans. They went to the Arkansas Academy of Fine Arts, a charter high school in Rogers, Arkansas, and were in their senior year. They were all planning to go to the University of Arkansas in Fayetteville next year, just a 30-minute drive or so from Rogers. Justy couldn't wait. "Oh, God," said Ashley, looking over Justy's shoulder. "Here comes Fatty." Justy glanced at the new kid, Emmett. He wasn't that fat, not really, but he was definitely overweight. She didn't enjoy making fun of him, especially given her history. But if it kept her in the popular crowd, she'd do it anyway. What other choice did she have? Ashley was the de facto leader of their little clique, and for whatever reason had taken an immediate dislike of Emmett, which unfortunately meant the other four had to follow her lead or risk being ostracized. "Don't let him get too close," said Justy in a stage whisper, "or he'll run you over like a tank." They all giggled, while Emmett stared at the floor and kept walking, just like she used to do at her old school when kids make fun of her weight. This was wrong. In her mind's eye, she saw herself getting up from the table, walking over to Emmett, and apologizing for her words. Maybe even giving him a hug. She shook her head. She couldn't do that. She'd be the laughingstock of the entire school. Instead, she simply watched with a pit in her stomach as Emmett walked as far across the lunchroom from them as possible and took a seat by himself at an empty table. "Why are you watching old Thunder Thighs?" asked Tegan, cocking her eyebrow at Justy. "Do you want to bang him or something?" All the girls laughed, and Justy's face turned crimson. "No thanks," she said, rolling her eyes. "I was just wondering why he transferred here halfway through senior year, that's all." "Probably because of all the other kids at the school making fun of him or something," said Chrissy. "Though why he thought of being different here is anyone's guess. He really needs to get his head out of his ass and work on losing some of that blubber." They all laughed, but inside Justy felt like crying. This is the sort of thing the kids said about her at her old school, throughout grade school and junior high. And I think I'll stop there and talk a little bit about the story. It is set in Rogers, where I live, and I mean, a lot of you know that. I set a lot of my things in Rogers. Hey, Crystal. Crystal says hello. Hello, Crystal. Crystal is a really great person. She's a fan of my books. Yay. She's also a paranormal investigator. If you need any paranormal investigations, you should give her a ring. Anyway, what I was saying is that I set a lot of my work in this short story, or this novella, and a lot of the short stories in there are set in Rogers, Arkansas. Some of this takes place at Lake Atalanta, and of course the Arkansas Academy of Fine Arts, which is a version of a real school that my son actually went to, Arkansas Arts Academy. But this school in my book is entirely made up. And anyway, I do like setting things local. It helps me envision what I'm writing about. Just like I've set a lot of my stories in Carthage, Illinois, where I grew up. And Leap Year was set in, was partly, well, it was set partly in Rogers, but it started out and was set partly in Keokuk, Iowa, which is a town not too far from Carthage that I visited a lot growing up, and where my sister Rebecca works and lives close to that. Let me find out where I was. Okay, I'll read a little more. Enrolling at AAFA for Justy's freshman year of high school after winning her battle with anorexia was her mother's idea, her way of giving Justy a fresh start, and she hadn't missed her old school at all with one exception, her best friend Matilda. She and Matilda had stayed in contact throughout the first year of high school, but eventually lost touch. She thought about emailing, texting, or calling her many times, but felt embarrassed that it had been so long, and so she never followed through. The longer time went, the harder it was to make contact. Justy listlessly picked at her lunch of chicken nuggets and french fries, waiting for lunch hour to be over, while her friends talked about what they'd done over the Thanksgiving break. After this morning and the encounter with Emmett at the start of lunch, she didn't have much of an appetite for food or conversation. So, Justy, how was your Thanksgiving? Michaela asked, concern in her eyes. Oh, it was fine, Justy said. We went to visit my grandma in Dallas, ate turkey and cranberry sauce and stuff, just like we always do. Same old, same old. Mercifully, the bell rang, cutting the conversation short. Justy said goodbye to her friends and headed to her AP Government and Politics class. She really needed to go to the bathroom. She should have gone after lunch, but had been distracted. Miss Green was talking about something that happened a zillion years ago when Jimmy Carter was president, and she hated to be interrupted, but Justy did not want to pee in the middle of the classroom, so she raised her hand. Yes, Justy, asked Miss Green with a long sigh. What do you need? I'm sorry, Miss Green, but I really need to go to the bathroom. You really need to learn to take your bathroom breaks before class and not during. Justy remained silent, staring defiantly at Mrs. Green. Finally, the teacher sighed again, made a shooing motion with her hand, and that was all the permission Justy needed. She hopped away from her desk and raced for the door. She'd missed some things about AFA. Once high school was over, she thought as she walked down the hallway and towards the bathroom, but one thing she wouldn't miss was Mrs. Green. She was definitely ready for college and the freedoms that would entail. And there was Emmett Sapp walking towards her. She quickly pivoted away from him, ignoring her aching bladder, and pretended she was doing something at someone's random locker while waiting for him to pass. She still felt awful for that thing she'd said about him being a tank, just like she always felt awful insulting him or any of the other non-popular kids in school. But what was she supposed to do? She hated the thought of going back to being one of the kids who was made fun of, like she'd made fun of Emmett. But was being one of the assholes really any better? Was being popular that important to her? Now Emmett was at his locker. Good. She quickly darted past him and made her way into the girls' bathroom. The bathroom was empty, and so she had the choice of stalls, which was always nice. She hated the one on the far right end of the toilet. On the far right end, the toilet seat was all janky and had been that way since last year, which made for an all-around uncomfortable experience. She let herself into the middle of the 5 stalls and sat down to relieve her bladder and check TikTok on her phone. One moment she was looking through some book talk videos, and the next she was somewhere else entirely. She found herself in a dark room lying on a bed. Someone was on top of her again, just like this morning, their hands squeezing, wrapped around her neck, and she couldn't move, couldn't breathe, could barely even think. She tried to call for help, tried to move, but her arms were pinned to her side. Her vision darkened, darker even than the room she was in, and she felt herself begin to lose consciousness. And that is where I'm going to stop. I read the first mini chapter, of which I think there's 20 in the book. And I hope you guys are interested in that. And again, the book will be released on June 10th. So just a couple days from now. Oh, there you see Archer walking behind me. Hey, Archer. And I hope you'll give it a try. It is free on Kindle Unlimited if you subscribe to that. It will eventually be released as an audiobook as well. I'm not exactly sure when. Anyway, I think I'm done for today. I talked about 20 minutes. That's pretty good for me because I really don't enjoy public speaking, but I'm trying to get better at it. And for anybody who joined this live or watches it later, thank you. Have a good rest of your Sunday. And remember, June 10th, Eventual Beginnings, Stories Short and Longer by Joe DeRowan.